Shame makes us feel isolated, afraid, and vulnerable. We feel unique in the worst possible ways. This is one more reason why the life of Jesus is so shocking, scandalous, and significant. Jesus, the King of Kings, suffered the shame and pain of rejection, abuse, and death. We know that Jesus died on the cross, but we want to better understand the scope of what he experienced. We also want to examine the motives of those who attacked him. Here's Jackson Wu to explain further.
Many people might say, as long as my family and town accept me, I can put up with anything. At the beginning of Jesus' ministry, he learned quickly that he would not have the support of his family and town. In Luke 4, Jesus reads a portion from Isaiah. He then commends a couple of Gentiles on whom God has shown favor. Verses 28 to 30 say this: When they heard these things, all in the synagogue were filled with wrath, and they rose up and drove him out of the town and brought him to the brow of the hill on which their town was built, so that they could throw him down the cliff. But passing through their midst, he went away. Because of their hatred for Gentiles, that is, non-Jews, his own neighbors with whom Jesus grew up turned against him. They could not tolerate the notion that God would show favor to their enemies, so they tried to kill him long before he dies on a cross in Jerusalem. Injustice followed Jesus, even when he showed mercy to a disabled woman. The local authorities were infuriated because he healed her on the Sabbath. But Jesus does not remain silent. He exposes their hypocrisy. Luke 13, verses 15 to 17 say this: Then the Lord answered him, the ruler of the synagogue, You hypocrites! Does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to water it? And ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan bound for 18 years, be loosed from his bond on the Sabbath day? As he said these things, all his adversaries were put to shame, and all the people rejoiced at all the glorious things that were done by him. Rejection and opposition followed Jesus. So we also should not be surprised if people try to shame us when we speak truth and challenge unjust norms. Communities are bound together by their values. Various practices symbolically express those values. So, by affirming those values or engaging in traditional practices, a person accepts an identity within the community. What happens when they reject one or more of these social norms? The group sees such persons as a threat to their values and a threat to their community. Why did Jesus die? Most Christians will say something like, He died for our sin. While true, I'm asking a different question. Why did the people who murdered Jesus kill him? What was their motive and mindset? I suggest this idea. From the perspective of the authorities, Jesus' death functioned very similar to an honor killing. How so? Jesus challenged the prestige and authority of the Jewish leaders. The number of his followers increasingly grew. Observe the conversation in John 11, 47 to 50. So the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered the council and said, What are we to do? For this man performs many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation. But one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, You know nothing at all, nor do you understand that it is better for you that one man should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish. In order to preserve their status and power, these leaders decided Jesus had to die. He threatened their honor and position in the eyes of Rome and the common people. After all, Jesus claimed that God blessed the poor and outcast, yet despised the status-seeking of the powerful. In an unlawful process, the Jewish leaders were able to manipulate the Roman authorities to condemn Jesus. He was beaten and crucified. Many people never survived the violent beatings. Those who did survive likely wish they had not. One scholar describes crucifixion in the ancient world like this: by the public display of a naked victim at a prominent place, at a crossroads, in the theater, on high ground, at the place of his crime, crucifixion also represented his uttermost humiliation. Victims were tormented publicly, physically, and psychologically. The violence of the cross had a single motive: humiliation. The fear of shame would keep others from acting contrary to the normal social system. Even after death, the crucified person was subject to more shame. That same scholar says this: crucifixion was aggravated further by the fact that quite often its victims were never buried. It often occurred that the crucified victim served as food for wild beasts and birds of prey. In this way, his humiliation was made complete. What it meant for a man in antiquity to be refused burial and the dishonor which went with it can hardly be appreciated by modern man. Death by crucifixion was sadistic. One scholar says this: the victims were crucified naked as a form of sexual humiliation. This humiliation also served as a warning to the public about the terrible consequences of rebelling against those in power. Don't forget that every victim of crucifixion had a family and a network of relationships. The family would be ashamed that one of their members suffered this fate. Friends would abandon the crucified victim at his most desperate hour. Imagine the impact of those watching. Some people have compared crucifixion to a state terror, which is a means in enforcing brutal authoritarianism through a culture of fear.
Jesus suffered great injustice. Through his suffering, Jesus changes us. Instead of us thinking, no one understands, now I know Jesus understands. Instead of believing I am alone, now I believe Jesus is with us always. When we face injustice, one choice is do nothing. A second choice is speak up, but we might get hurt if we do. However, only the second choice leads to the possibility of a better life, a life more like what God had in mind at creation. Christ embraced shame because he was loyal to God's call on his life. He glorified God by revealing God's will to people. In the Gospels, some people avoided difficulties by running from Jesus. Others were silent and went along with the crowd. There is no honor in hiding. In fact, hiding is what we do when we are slaves to shame. Jesus is bold because he wants people to be truly free. Jesus is a king, but not the king that people expected. He exposes and defeats evil by enduring humiliation and suffering. We do not truly receive Jesus if we think of Jesus merely as honored and esteemed. No, he is a crucified king who suffered unimaginable shame. Through shame, Jesus is the saving King. And through Jesus, the saving King, we also have the possibility to endure, confront, and conquer shame. So how should we respond to Jesus? In Luke 9:26, Jesus says, "For whoever is ashamed of me and of my words, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed when he comes in his glory and the glory of the Father and of the holy angels." In the coming videos, we will see a pattern in the life of Jesus. He was honored through shame. In John 12:25 and 26, Jesus says, "Whoever loves his life loses it, and whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. If anyone serves me, he must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him." Throughout his life, Jesus endured shame. He understands the evil of our world. Yet, at the same time, he suffered and died willingly because he had hope and saw beyond the shame. We will discuss this more in the next videos.